Hello, everyone. I'm Hillary Crow. I'm Vice President of Civics at the U.S. Chamber Foundation, and really delighted to be with you all today and with our panel. We've got a great group of women leaders here and excited to dive into conversation. We've got a pretty hefty topic before us. And before we dive in, I wanted to start with a little bit of an audience poll. So, show of hands. How many of you in the audience are concerned about the levels of polarization across our country? Is that everyone? Great. And I guess opposite of that, how many feel great about the direction that our country is headed in as a whole? No one. Okay. So I think we're right on topic and have a good conversation. We are here to talk about how we can improve the state of civic health in our country and the role of business in strengthening American democracy. You might have seen over the weekend in the New York Times, there was an article on this specifically. You know, a new place to learn about civics, the workplace, and really called out business as the place where there's a real opportunity to educate employees and people across the country when it comes to civic engagement and civic knowledge. Based on your responses in the audience poll, it probably comes as no surprise that we, as a whole, are uninformed and unengaged, right, when it comes to civics. And it's for adults and for young people. You know, not only does the nation's report card show us that 8th graders, 80% of 8th graders can't pass a civics test, but also us adults. Most of us can't name the 3 branches of government, or even less can name a single right protected by the First Amendment. Recent research shows that when asked, during a recent survey, adults were asked, if you had to choose between giving up your right to vote or giving up your social media accounts for a year, which would you pick? You're probably not surprised to hear that the majority of those surveyed said they'd give up their right to vote over their TikTok and Instagram accounts. And so that's a pretty clear indicator of a significant problem as we think about our long-term competitiveness as a country and a democracy. So, delighted to jump into conversation today on the role of business in democracy. And I'm joined by Janice Brenner from Travelers. She leads their Citizens Travelers Initiative, which is a nonpartisan effort to engage employees in civic knowledge and engagement, and we'll hear more about that soon. We have Betsy Martin from Boeing, and she's going to share how Boeing is really elevating civics internally and some of the programs that they're working on. And then we have Natalie Tran from, let me make sure, Creative Artists Agency Foundation.
Nicely done.
They activate pop culture to create sustainable social change and have been really engaged on elevating civics and putting out pro-democracy messaging. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
I want to start with a question for each of you. So despite the article in the New York Times that there is an opportunity for business to have a role here, and we, of course, at the foundation, you see the theme of the conference today, business solves, right? We believe in the power of business to solve our most complicated and tricky problems. And unfortunately, we're not seeing many businesses at the table yet. And so this is an invitation to come and join us in this work. But simply put, on behalf of each of your organizations, why do you care? And why is this important to you and your companies?
Sure. So I think at Travelers, we like to say we have long been a good corporate citizen, but with our initiative, Citizen Travelers, we're becoming a corporation of good citizens, or finding new ways to be a corporation of good citizens. And I think it really goes back to this idea that, for 160 years, Travelers has benefited from the democratic system within the United States and the rule of law and capitalism, and this idea that there's predictable and fair outcomes within our democratic system. I go back to, I started my career as a capital markets lawyer, and people, from across the world would come to tap our capital markets because they knew that the information they were getting was full and fair, and that there was predictable outcomes. They knew what the laws were, they knew they would be enforced, they knew what they were getting into, and that has made our capital markets amazingly liquid and reliable. And I think we all, as business people, have an obligation to and an interest in wanting to preserve that democratic system that we've all thrived under. And so I think that was really the impetus for starting our initiative. I think another thing that we've noticed, which has been helpful, is that one of the things we like to say about our initiative is that we are aggressively nonpartisan. And I think we made that a fundamental premise of the initiative at the beginning, because you really need to have trust. I mean, we are spread throughout the United States. We have customers and employees in every state in the country that have different perspectives, experiences, and viewpoints. And we really wanted this to be an initiative that everyone would embrace and that they would trust was not trying to push a particular political agenda. And so we've been very careful to make sure what we're doing is nonpartisan and really just trying to give people the tools and resources that they can use to engage in their own right and in their own communities. And that's been helpful, I think, also because, as I'm sure many people in the audience are aware, it's a hot time. So there's a lot of times when corporations are called, we engage as a corporation through our government relations arm on issues that are directly impacting our business, for example, pricing our products or regulation and things of that nature. But there's a lot of issues kind of in the sphere today, the public sphere today, that are difficult for businesses to engage on because there are so many different views within their customer base and throughout the country. And so and their employees have different perspectives. And so what we found is very helpful is sometimes when we aren't in a position to engage on a particular issue that's not directly related to our business, what we can do is offer our employees the tools and resources to engage on their own and to basically say, we support you in going on a nonpartisan basis, but we support you in being an active, engaged citizens with respect to the issues that matter to you. And I think that's been really well received.
Great. Betsy?
Well, I joined Boeing a little over a year ago, and I think it was day 4 for me that someone said, Betsy, we need to get you plugged into a strategic discussion around Boeing's investments pertaining to democracy and the 250th anniversary. And I will tell you, at that moment, I was like, I need to focus on supporting my career at Boeing on day 4 and not that. But I was so proud to know that this was something we as a company were already thinking about and really investing time and resources. My background is I came from 10 years at the Bush Center in Dallas, Texas, President and Mrs. Bush's nonprofit there, and this matters to me personally, and I'm so proud that Boeing has taken this on and is really stepping up. So to give you a quick highlight, Boeing has invested specifically, and I'm taking notes from these ladies today because we've got a long ways to go and we're just on the cutting edge of starting this. But to date, Boeing has invested in presidential sites and centers around the country that we see that are really emboldening and empowering these tenets of democracy that we think are important. I'll give you a couple of examples because I think there are ways for your employees to plug in. We announced over the weekend that we're supporting the Profiles in Courage essay that's run out of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library. It's open starting today, I think, for high school students to participate, and you should encourage your employees' kiddos to do so. It's a great way to really research and learn about these incredible men and women who have risked their political careers for the greater good of this nation. My favorite example that we always hear is that a young gentleman in high school by the name of Pete Buttigieg actually wrote about another gentleman by the name of Bernie Sanders and won the essay contest several years ago. So you can see the caliber and that spark of curiosity that creates. We sponsored the desegregation of the military that was put into effect by President Truman this year. It was 75th anniversary. I think it's such an important reminder to remind our employees and everyone across this nation that we are an imperfect nation. We have had a long ways that we have come, but we've got further ways to go there. At the Bush Center, where I used to work, we support our military initiative. I think we cannot lose sight of the fact that we are a country that is protected, the 99% by 1%, and that 1% is an all-volunteer force, and that is so critical to this country, and we have got to celebrate and and recognize that. And finally, the 4th of July, we celebrate a naturalization ceremony at Mount Vernon as the Boeing Company. And if you want to be inspired by this nation and what it stands for, go talk to someone who's a first-generation immigrant who's just been naturalized. There is nothing more powerful than that. So a lot of that to say, that's where we've been focused. We've got a ways to go. So like you, I'm taking notes today. That's why I have my note cards up here. But why do we care as a business? I mean, we've got a lot of priorities at Boeing right now that we're focused on. And we care because we need future leaders that are civically minded. If you are looking like we are doing right now at building a rocket that's going to take us beyond the moon to Mars in this next great space race 2.0, we need people who have dissenting opinions, that are able to sit at the table with people on their team that look different from them, that have different political beliefs, that have a different ethnicity, different orientations, and to be able to disagree but get to the common end goal of getting that rocket to Mars. And you've got to be able to do that with civility, and that does not start when you join Boeing, Travelers, Chamber of Commerce, CAA, anywhere else. That starts in the classroom now, and that's why we care, to ensure that we're cutting edge for the next 107 years of our history.
Thank you.
Amen. Natalie.
So just really quickly, my parents fled the country of Vietnam as they were battling a communist government. So I was raised with an understanding that a democracy is something to be treasured. So like many of you, this work is super personal to me. And for those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, CAA is a sports, media, and talent agency. We have the honor of representing writers, directors, storytellers, athletes, musicians, and brands. And it's our business model to create platforms for them to show audiences new worlds and what's possible. So from a business perspective, having our employees and our clients, these artists, know what we stand for is really important. It's actually really critical for our business. And so this idea of being able to invest and support and have civic engagement be a part of the fabric of who we are is essential. You know, we believe that our actions can lead to an equitable and an optimistic future. We have that written everywhere in all of our kitchens and all of our shared spaces. And it's a really important thing for our colleagues and for our artists to have. And so I'll give you a quick example of how that's embedded into the day-to-day of our work. Election day is framed for us as a day of service, as a day of action. Not only do we want our employees to go out and vote, we encourage them to go be poll workers, we encourage them to go support polling locations, and so this idea of a culture of engagement is really important. And we, you know, in an effort to get other entertainment companies to join us, we used our convening power and our unique position in popular culture to launch the Civic Alliance, which is a nonpartisan business coalition dedicated to strengthening our democracy. What we thought would be a network of 40 people, 40 companies in entertainment is now 1,300 companies across the country. Some of you are in the room now, so thank you, from Best Buy, Microsoft, Amazon, Tyson, Target, the list goes on. And I'm really excited to tell you more about the Civic Alliance on this panel, so thank you.
Excellent. Well, so at the foundation, we launched a couple of years ago a body of work called the Civic Trust. And one of our main goals is really to mobilize the business community around this really big, complicated problem. And people will ask us a lot, well, why business? You know, sure, I care as an American. I care as somebody who cares about the future of our country and the strength of our political system, but why business? And so we like to remind folks that, you know, trust in business is higher than in any other institution in the country. And in particular, people trust their employer more than any other institution. And so there's a real opportunity for business to sort of take on that responsibility and turn some of this worry around the state of our country and put that into work, literally. And we also like to point out the connection between civic skills and workplace skills, right? Things like listening, teamwork, critical thinking, analytical thinking, having opposing points of views, but having a shared purpose. And the workplace is one of those places where people still have to come together, right? Who look different, have different opinions, and have to come together around a shared objective. And so from your own words, though, would love for you to speak to the audience of why business and why should other companies engage in this work? Janice.
Sure. So I think all those points you made are spot on. They're very important to us at Travelers. I think there's the trust. It's a big place, a big part of where we spend our lives. Also, I think, when you see these surveys where people are, there's the surveys that suggest that our students in K through 12 don't have civic knowledge, but there's also these surveys you see, like they stop someone on the street and they say, what are the 3 branches of government? And those numbers are staggering, right? It's like 40% of the country or more can't, depending on when the question is asked, can't name the 3 branches of government. I mean, that's a problem,
Yes.
right? And so it's not just about educating the current students, but it's also continuing this civic education throughout our lifetimes and making sure that we remember through history and through learning, like, what are the issues of today. And I think businesses can play a great role in that. I mean, at Travelers, we just had through our Travelers Institute, we did a webinar on the Supreme Court recently. And it was very much not on current cases or the current court, but it was really just about what is the court? Where does it get its constitutional power? What are, what guidelines is it subject to? How do you become a Supreme Court justice? Basic questions. And we had a huge response to that. And we were very careful to do it in a nonpartisan manner and rely on scholars who understood that mission. But it was a huge response, and people were like, this is really outstanding because these are things that I may not have known, and all I hear is the soundbite, like about a current case, and now I understand kind of the framework, and so I can think critically about those decisions. So I think there's a real appetite for that.
Great. Betsy, would you?
That's terrific. As I said, I'm taking notes here on things we need to be implementing. But I think employees is the reason why, right? We see employees that are hungry to engage, to give back, and to volunteer, and having that. What did you say? The election day is a day of service. Like, I think that is so important. But everyone's busy, right? We all have lives. We all have kids that we need to get to school, dress up for Halloween, get lunches made, and we need to be able to help provide those opportunities. And that's really where I think business has an opportunity to step in and to do that. At Boeing this year, we've seen an increase in 60% of team volunteerism, people raising their hand and saying, we want to participate. We've seen 63 million that have been given in the last year alone at Boeing, and we're a large company, but invested in community events that are happening. And so that is there, and I think it is our responsibility as a business to be able to help outline some of those days of service and things that we're doing. I thought this was an interesting stat that I wanted to share. The 2018 Trust Barometer revealed that nearly 2/3, 64% of global respondents to this survey believe a company can take actions that both increase the profit, which we know we're a business at the end of the day, but also improve economic and social conditions in the communities where they operate. And I think we see that day in and day out. We talk all the time at Boeing about where we have sites. We've got to make those places better, factories where our employees are living and work for their kids that are in school, better than when we found it when we came there, and that is on us to do so.
I knew we were going to be friends because I'm a data nerd too. So another piece to add to that, and why we're all seeing an increase in engagement is because 70% of Americans define their sense of purpose through work. Millennials especially are really looking for opportunities in their workplace to be able to express this, and employees who believe that their company is having an impact in their community are 5.5 times more likely to trust their company leadership. So there are all sorts of reasons why we should be doing this. I think a question that's equally as important is how. How do we do this? And so that's kind of what we try to answer at the Civic Alliance. We really try and give individuals at these companies who are tasked with doing these jobs, who wear 5 million other hats, as much information as possible so they can be the best civic expert they can for their company. So we create resources. We have an election starter toolkit. We have resource guides. We have workshops and seminars. So that way we can all learn peer-to-peer, learn from each other, learn what's working at our companies, and really help companies elevate corporate civic engagement. And best of all, membership for Civic Alliance is free. That's my plug, civicalliance.com. And you will find all this information, and we take experts, we bring experts together to really help create a lot of these resources, so what you're accessing is actually going to be practical and something that you can implement at your own companies.
Excellent. So, Betsy, recently we were talking, and you mentioned a quote that's used a lot inside of Boeing. You said, the philosophy of one generation becomes the policy of the next, which is often attributed to Abraham Lincoln. But can you tell us about what that means inside of Boeing?
Well, Abraham Lincoln, no offense to President Bush, who I worked for, but Abraham Lincoln is my favorite president. And as a third grader, actually, we were assigned a wax museum, and I chose Mary Todd Lincoln as my book report. And I don't know if you know a lot about Mary Todd Lincoln, but she is the most tragic history person you will ever read about. I remember you stepped on my dot, and I came to life and said, "My name is Mary Todd Lincoln, and I led a very sad life." And it is, but that, I think that third grade investment by my teacher really helped spark that curiosity that then led me to work for a first lady many years later across the street at the White House, which was the honor of a lifetime. And it starts with the kids, right? That's what we are about. It's the next generation. What we are investing in kids right now is the benefit that we as a nation and a country will reap in the years to come, and that is really important. I spent a lot of time at the Bush Center working on Afghanistan and women's issues related to what was happening in Afghanistan at the time. And we saw, I'll leave the company nameless, but a major education company over there said, we're not focused on the parents, we're focused on the kids. That if we're going to affect change for women and really change how women are seen in Afghanistan, we've got to start with the kids. So they filmed dads packing their little girl's backpack to go to school. They filmed girls raising their hands in the classroom to show that this is what women's rights should look like in Afghanistan. I do the same thing on a different scale on a day-to-day basis at Boeing, trying to get kids excited about space, engineering, science. We talk about science, technology, engineering, and math, right? We spend a lot on that. And if we don't reach you at an early age, it's typically too late to get you that foundation that will then put you into a career at somewhere like Boeing to be able to do that. But the same thing happens. We've seen the data points, back to our data points, and I want to make sure I get this right. Recent studies show that the federal government spends $50 per student on STEM education and 5 cents on civics. So I think, we have gotten the message on STEM. We know it's important. We've got to get the message on civics education, right? And I think it is up to business to help balance that scale. We cannot just depend on the government, nor should we to do that. We have a responsibility to do so. And so I think, I want to quote, I'm sorry, I keep quoting, but these are so great. President Bush said in a speech on civics education in the Rose Garden back in 2002, to properly understand and love our country, we must know our country's history. American children are not born knowing why they should cherish American values. A love of democratic principles must be taught. And I think, again, it is up to us to amplify, to leverage programs like the Civic Alliance, like the Civic Speed that you're leading, to make sure that we are supporting that so that the next workers at Boeing, Travelers, CAA, Chamber of Commerce, all of your organizations are ready to take on the challenge for the years ahead.
So Natalie, we've talked a bit about how engaged your organization is in really elevating civics as a priority and putting out that pro-democracy messaging. But we know that there's a lot of influence that comes from the media that we consume every day, right? In movies and TV shows. How can we change the story when it comes to what people are seeing on TV or in movies that they consume every day?
Yeah, I love this question because the average American watches on average of 5 hours of television a day. So if we don't think about the role of popular culture as a tool to help drive policy and plant ideas and new seeds for people, I think we're missing something. And at the Civic Alliance, at the end of the day, you have to remember that writers are people too. And so we need to be able to give them the tools to be able to integrate ideas and messaging into their storylines and into their shows. So at the Civic Alliance, in partnership with other members, including Viacom, Paramount, MTV, Comedy Central, at Spotify, and Walt Disney Television, we work together to create a Civic Storylines toolkit. And every single chapter covers a different format, whether it's scripted, television, unscripted, short form, podcast, comedy. And we are literally giving writers line by line, here's what it would look like if you were to showcase a poll worker in one of your TV shows, or what would it look like if a character, as they were leaving the room, said, I gotta go register to vote now, or I need to go do this. We're not asking writers to change the entire story. We're actually just asking them to integrate it into some of the shows that we all watch every single night. So we create these toolkits, and then we work with every single studio, and we go writer's room by writer's room, and it's a tutorial, and we're just working with them because they're artists at the end of the day. So we really just try and give them the tools that they need in order to integrate this into all of the shows that we watch. And we're really excited about that. We're starting our work for 2024. We're going to start getting into writers' rooms as soon as the strikes are over in Hollywood, and start working with our partners. We're really excited, and I think a lot of what you'll end up seeing closer to election time, hopefully, will be an outcome of some of the work that we're doing now.
Great. And Janice, you mentioned earlier Citizens Travelers, which is a pretty tangible thing that Travelers has started, and you've been running as a way, as you mentioned, in a nonpartisan way to really engage employees. Would love to hear about what the impact of that program has been so far for your workforce.
Sure. So I think when we started Citizen Travelers, and now we kind of divided into 3 goals. First, we wanted to give people the tools and information they needed to be engaged citizens and to combat disinformation. So to let people be able to think critically about issues in the scope of public life today. And then the second thing we wanted to do was encourage civil dialogue and civil discourse. So we wanted people to, and one of the things we do at Travelers is we work together as a team, and we work with people of all different perspectives, and we wanted to be able to say, like, how do we model and support that? And not just within Travelers, but outside. And then the third thing we wanted to do was just encourage people to get involved in civic life. So, there's all these, not just at the federal or state level, but at the local level. There's so many of these, I think the last couple of years have made us realize how important at the local level leadership is. So there's decisions that impact everyday lives, and we wanted people to be involved in their communities in a civic way. And so with those 3 goals in mind, we did a bunch of different things to allow employees to engage, to offer them opportunities to get out into their communities, and also to provide tools and resources that gave them nonpartisan information. And I could talk about this all afternoon, and I'd be happy to with anybody who's interested, but I'll just touch on one example. So what we did is we set up essentially a social network of our employees throughout the country who are civically engaged, and basically set up a site where they can communicate with each other, and so that people know who they are. And then, so basically, through this network, we were showcasing people that are involved civically to inspire others to do it, and also to just showcase how many different ways there are to get involved. And so our employees started talking to each other, and it was really interesting to see. So, for example, I'll just give one example. We had someone who's the head of their fire commission in Connecticut was able to share with someone in Philadelphia, hey, we just got this great new grant from FEMA to allow us to market, to try and recruit additional volunteer firefighters, and this is how we did it. And they're sharing that with another employee somewhere else in the country, and it was really inspiring to see, not only for those 2 who were able to tap this information, but also for others to say, like, hey, I'm interested in that as well. This is a way I could get involved. And also the other thing that kind of that spurred is, what we also decided to do is when we saw how many employees within Travelers were already civically engaged and serving in these local offices, whether that be head of the fire commission, on their school board, on their economic development council, on their, we had one employee who's a tree warden. He was basically responsible for taking care of all the trees in his town. So I think it showed people, like, no matter what your interest is, there's a way for you to get involved and further that in your community. But also what we decided to do is we started to spotlight these employees. So we did short video clips of them, and you can see some of them are on our website, basically, so that other employees could see, their colleagues and peers who are involved and say, wow, just see another dimension of them, but also say, like, hey, I'd like to do that too. And the response has been amazing, and it's really been inspiring to me, I think, both on a personal and professional level, to see how many people within Travelers are involved already in their communities, how many local offices exist, and to actually see kind of this movement of other people wanting to get involved as well.
That's great. And definitely we've seen the same, the local piece being so critical, right? There's so much more trust at the local level. And I think once you sort of trigger that local engagement and local learning in civics, that really just takes off from there and can have a really large ripple effect across the country.
I agree. I think it's also a great way for people to meet people that they might not otherwise cross paths with. So one of the things we do at Travelers really well is working together as a team and talking across different perspectives. And I think when you go into your community and you sit on a board and you sit in a town council meeting and you realize people are coming to you with, you know, different perspectives about what's important to them and why they're unhappy or why they're happy, and you really start to learn, hey, like, I'm an elected official or I'm an appointed official and I have to be able to figure out solutions for a broad group of people. And I think it really, you know, you get it. It's a great thing to see and be part of.
Okay, so we have a couple speed round questions. So these are intended to be pretty quick. If you could pull one lever in the coming year that you think could have a really significant impact on our civic health in the US, what would it be? Which one would you choose? I'll start with Natalie.
I would have to say popular culture, entertainment, film, TV, music.
Great, Betsy.
What I was going to say, but I'll let you have the creative because that fits your role. I think bring artifacts to life, right? Kids need to be able to see, touch, and understand primary sources. They need to be able to research that and then have healthy debate around that. So I'd love to bring some of these things, whatever they are, to life for kiddos.
All right, Janice.
I would love for people to get out in their communities on the local level and get involved civically and just start to realize how much we can impact on a local level and how great a way that is to kind of get to know other people and the nuance of that.
Nice. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about young people, right, and thinking about the next generation of leaders and how important it is to engage them while they're still young and hopeful and optimistic. So if you had a direct line to today's third graders, right, what would you want them to believe most about democracy and civics, the hope that they would carry that into their adulthood?
I'm happy to start. You should learn to love history, I think. If third grade wax museum, I'm still up here talking about Mary Todd Lincoln. And I think, we are a perfectly imperfect nation. We have failed so many times. There have been so many things we have gotten wrong over the years, and we own that. And I think that is such a lesson in life for all of us, that you're not going to get it right the first time, you're not going to get it right the fifth time, but you keep trying. And I think that is the hope of this country, is that we're the great experiment, and it is still ongoing, and we've got a long ways to go, but I think with the people that we have and that we see, privileged to see every day in the communities that we work in, I mean, there's a lot of reason for optimism out there.
Natalie?
I'll jump in. I mean, when I was in third grade, social media did not exist. So when I think about third graders today, they're living in a completely different world. And so my advice to them would be to put your phone down and to get proximate in real life and to have real conversations. I think social media can be friend and foe, but it would just be a reminder to really engage with real people and have real conversations.
Janice?
I totally agree. I'm going to try a quote now. I think it was Jimmy Carter who said something along the lines of, the only role that's greater in our country than president is that of citizen. And so I would say to the students, engage. I think learn the history and don't be a bystander. Like vote when you can. Learn the issues and just be a participant.
Okay, one closing question as we are nearing time. I guess one final thought that you would love to leave with an audience of business leaders, and also if there's one thing that, as you're thinking about your own company's goals around civics for 2024 and beyond, that you're really proud of and looking forward to implementing.
So I would just say, I think one of the things that I've learned in this role is that there are so many resources out there to be, as a business, to in this civic engagement space. So I think there's so many nonprofits that you can tap into that are doing this work, that have a wealth of information. So I think in addition to the Civics Trust and the Civics Bee is a huge thing that we support, and I think is a great way to kind of spread civic engagement throughout the country. Also, there's the National Constitution Center, Gilder Lehrman, I mean, I could go on, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but there's a lot of organizations out there who are really doing civic engagement well on a nonprofit level that you can tap into and partner with, and that's been very effective for us. I think the other thing I would say is, feel free to, like travelers, I think we've spent time and effort on this to be thoughtful about it. We're happy to share. The nice thing about a civic engagement initiative is that there's now no competition here. Like, we all succeed together. So the more businesses that do this, the better off we will be. So reach out to us at citizentravelers@travelers.com. We have a website. Feel free to check it out. I'd be happy to talk to anyone who's interested.
Great, taking you up on that. I'll say I'm kind of a history nerd if you can't tell. And Boeing was founded in 1916, and women did not receive the right to vote, as many of you know, until 1920. So, I think it's pretty remarkable that 100 years later, we have 4 women on stage talking about the future of this country, the direction that we're headed, and how we preserve and safeguard these values down the road. And so, again, I've said it 100 times, but I'm an eternal optimist, right? I think we have challenging times right now. I don't think that, you can look at where we are and not realize that it's a tough road. We've got a lot of work to do, and the statistics are really kind of stark. But we've got good people that are leading the charge. And so I would say to all of us, the actions that we choose to take today, being investment, being what we encourage our employees to do, the opportunities to provide, will either pay dividends or consequences for the future. And we can't be passive. We've got to really dig in and go deep on this. And, I think the other thing that I would say is just get curious. We were laughing backstage. I bought the civics flashcards, in preparation for this because I was nervous Hillary was going to quiz us on our civics lesson, and I didn't want to embarrass Boeing. But, it was fun. My family spent time around the kitchen table and, looking at, how many amendments are there in the Constitution? Does anyone know? Hillary?
27.
27. I mean, things like that you learn but you've forgotten, or your kids may not be learning right now. Like, make this fun. It is something that we can do on a personal level, and we can also do as a business. And so I would encourage you to just find your part and really, really dig in.
I'm just excited that I think there's so much creativity and innovation that can come into building out what your culture of civics is at your company. If you or someone on your team needs a little bit more help or support, or you're curious about what other companies are doing, I would really urge you all to check out the Civic Alliance, because it's really what we were created to do, was to really be of service to all of you and to make it as easy as possible for companies to do that. So check out civicalliance.com, or you can feel free to email me, natalie.tran@ca.com. I'm so serious about this. I really want to talk to everybody, because I think if not us, who? So I think we have an opportunity here, and I'm excited to meet you all.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining today and being part of this panel. This is such an important topic, and hopefully you in the audience were inspired to bring this back to your companies and have conversation. As I think Janice said, it's not a competition, but here at the Foundation, we would love to talk to you as well about what we're doing with the Civic Trust. The Civic Alliance is doing awesome work, and we have partnered and elevated each other's work and resources over the last few years. And we can't say enough, there's a real opportunity for business to help solve this really big problem. And we invite you sincerely to come and join us in these efforts. So thank you very much.